Welcome to this explainer. Today, we are diving straight into one of the most visceral, intense, and frankly high-stakes aspects of the entire global energy sector. We're talking about the safety of the men and women who physically extract oil and gas from the earth. We'll be looking closely at the Sustainability Accounting Standards Board, or SASB, guidelines for the exploration and production industry, what we usually just call E&P. Specifically, we're going to see exactly how these massive global corporations are actually required to track, measure, and report on the health and safety of their workforce.
And really, it all starts with one fundamental question. How do you actually measure safety in some of the absolute harshest working environments on the planet? I mean, we aren't talking about ergonomic office chairs here, right? We're talking about offshore rigs getting battered by massive ocean storms. We're talking remote land sites dealing with extreme, blistering heat or freezing cold, and heavy, dangerous machinery that literally never stops running. With millions of workers deployed all over the globe, the people pulling energy from the earth are operating in inherently high-stakes environments where a single misstep can, quite frankly, be catastrophic.
And the risks they face? They're incredibly diverse. The SASB standards actually outline these specific hazards. We're talking about acute physical harms, accidents, and handling hazardous materials. But it goes way beyond just sudden accidents. Workers are also at risk for chronic conditions. Think about the long-term effects of inhaling silica or dust day after day. Add to that the severe mental health challenges brought on by intense isolation and high-pressure work. And we also have to factor in specific structural risks of discrimination or a lack of protection for women and minorities operating in certain regions. So, these reporting standards we're looking at today, they aren't just bureaucratic red tape. They are literally a matter of life and death, designed to ensure companies are proactively protecting their people.
So, to understand how this is all measured, we're going to break the SASB standards down into 5 key areas: the high-stakes environment, the segmented E&P workforce, tracking the incident rates, proactive versus reactive metrics, and finally, building a safety culture.
Okay, let's kick things off with a major complication in protecting these workers: the segmented E&P workforce.
So here's the thing. A huge proportion of the workforce at oil and gas sites doesn't actually work directly for the E&P company. They're contractors, or they're employed by third-party service companies. Because of this, SASB forces companies to draw a hard line and report their safety data in 2 distinct buckets. First, you've got your direct employees. These are the folks officially on the payroll, whether they're full-time, seasonal, or migrant workers. And second, your contract employees, individuals not on the payroll but still supervised by the entity, like independent contractors or folks from labor brokers. Why does this split matter so much? Well, historically, if a company only reported on its direct employees, a massive chunk of the on-site risk, the contract workers, could literally just slip through the cracks. By separating them out, the standard demands total accountability for every single person wearing a hard hat on that site.
Now that we know exactly who is on site, let's move right into tracking the incident rates. The first major metric you need to know is TRIR, or the Total Recordable Incident Rate. And to be clear, this isn't about tracking minor scrapes that just need a Band-Aid. SASB defines a recordable incident as one resulting in death, days away from work, restricted work or job transfer, loss of consciousness, or any medical treatment that goes beyond basic first aid. It also ropes in any significant injury or illness diagnosed by a physician. By strictly defining what actually counts, TRIR acts as a hard, undeniable metric of serious, real-world harms occurring on the job.
But hey, waiting around for someone to actually get hurt? That's not enough. And that brings us to NMFR, the near-miss frequency rate. A near miss is an unplanned event that didn't result in an injury or damage this time, but absolutely had the potential to do so under slightly different circumstances. Imagine a multi-ton piece of equipment falling and missing a worker by just a few inches. Tracking those near misses is incredibly vital. Think of it like a giant check engine light for a drilling site. If your near miss rate is suddenly spiking, it's a massive red flag that a severe accident is right around the corner. It gives management the chance to step in before a tragedy actually strikes.
Now, here's a fun fact. When companies report these rates, whether it's TIR, NMFR, or fatality rates, SASB requires them to use a very specific multiplier in their formula. That magic number? 200,000.
So where on earth does 200,000 come from? It's actually pretty simple math. It represents the total number of hours that 100 full-time workers working 40 hours a week for 50 weeks a year can provide annually. You take your incident count, multiply it by 200,000, and divide by the total hours worked by all employees. This completely normalizes the data. Without this formula, there's no way you could fairly compare a massive global energy corporation with 50,000 employees against a small independent driller with just 200 employees. This mathematical baseline gives investors and regulators a true apples-to-apples comparison across the entire industry.
All right, so we know how to measure what goes wrong. Let's look at near misses in training. Up to this point, fatalities, TIR, and near misses. They're all reactive metrics, right? They count events that have already happened. But SASB also demands a critical proactive metric, the average hours of health, safety, and emergency response training provided to the workforce. And remember our segmented workforce from earlier? Companies have to disclose this training average separately for both direct employees and contract employees. It's simply not enough to say you run a safe site. You have to prove, mathematically, that you are putting in the hours required to prepare every single person on site for occupational hazards and emergency situations.
All this data is great, but the standard actually goes beyond raw numbers to look at the overarching philosophy. That means building a safety culture.
SASB requires companies to discuss the actual management systems they use to integrate a culture of safety. And you can't just slap up some safety posters during the active drilling phase. This safety culture has to be baked in at every single stage of the E&P life cycle. That means starting from the initial geological and seismic surveys, running through exploratory drilling and site development, continuing into the long years of hydrocarbon production, all the way to the final decommissioning of the well. The technology, the training, the protective gear, it all has to be coordinated comprehensively. And not just for the company itself, but for all business partners and subcontractors involved at every single step.
Because ultimately this isn't just about checking a compliance box. As the SASB standard points out, a culture that engages and empowers employees may help entities reduce production downtime, mitigate costs, ensure workforce productivity, and maintain their license to operate. It's a straight line. Protecting lives directly protects operational viability. When your culture empowers employees to safeguard their own well-being, you prevent accidents, and fewer accidents mean less production downtime, lower costs, higher productivity, and crucially, keeping your social and regulatory license to operate in that community. At the end of the day, safety is fundamentally good business.
Which brings us to the final thought I want to leave you with today. When you're looking at the sustainability, the governance, and the true value of an exploration and production company, if they can't manage to protect the people working in the most dangerous, high-stakes environments to pull energy from the earth, how can you possibly trust them to protect the long-term value of the business itself? The numbers don't lie, and thanks to these standardized metrics, they're hiding right there in plain sight. Keep learning, keep questioning, and thanks so much for joining me for this explainer.